Now let's talk about what's going on with the DCCC, because you and I have talked
Oh
about
yeah.
this in the past. The last time we talked, it was right after, I think, the DCCC had announced that if you are working with a primary opponent to a sitting Democrat, regardless of who that Democrat is, if you are a vendor, you provide phone banking technology, you provide a website design, you provide list making or polling like you might, Sean, then you are
Mhm.
blacklisted by the DCCC, and if you will not get any deals from them or any contracts with them. What just briefly just explain to people why that's a big deal.
Sure. I mean, in a lot of ways, it ended up being not as much of an impediment as the DCCC had hoped, because a lot of vendors are still willing to work with these progressive challengers. If you want, I can explain why. It's that in the 2018 cycle, there was a lot of new Democrats who are being recruited, not like new Democrats in the sort of caucus, but like new Democrats who, people who hadn't run for office before. And so they really relied heavily on the DCCC to tell them who to work with. So the DCCC was able to sort of like use that power. In this cycle, most of these Democrats are running for a second term in red to blue districts. So if you already have been using a vendor that you trust, you don't need the DCCC to recommend that vendor for you. But the idea that the DCCC theorized was that basically they were going to be able to starve these primary challengers from vendors. I mean, to some extent it worked. There were, Marie Newman lost, I believe it was a mail vendor and a digital vendor and then a polling vendor. But the problem that the DCCC, I think, didn't foresee was that within a couple of days, they were flooded with mail vendors, digital vendors, and pollsters who were more than willing to work with them.
And who is Marie Newman? Just be cleared on that.
Oh, sure. Yeah, sorry about that. Marie Newman is running against Dan Lipinski. Dan Lipinski is a member of Congress, a Democrat in finger quotes from Illinois' 3rd. He is anti-gay. He's the only Democrat who opposed the recent legislation to extend civil rights protections to LGBT Americans that Democrats passed to the House. He is anti-choice. He's the only Democrat who is a member of the Pro-Life Caucus, and not only is he a member, he is actually the co-chair of the Pro-Life Caucus. He voted against the Affordable Care Act after working to water down contraception access. And then he actually refused to endorse Obama in 2012. So,
now he comes from a deep red.
Yeah.
He must come from a deep red district, right? I mean, that's the only
No,
way that you could justify having a Democrat who votes on all of the at least substantial issues that we talk about over the past couple of years with Republicans. So his district must be super deep red for the DCCC to be protecting him, because you don't understand, Sean. If it's not for Dan Lipinski, that district would obviously have a Republican, correct?
Well, turns out that is not true. That district, Clinton won it by double digits. It is a safe district. It's so safe that Republicans basically don't even bother contesting it. Last cycle, the person who ended up winning the Republican primary was a literal neo-Nazi. So, yeah, it's not a district that Republicans are interested in contesting. It will not be a district that they're going to contest if Newman won. There is absolutely no excuse for protecting Dan Lipinski. And, to be honest, it's really despicable at a time when Republicans are passing abortion bans that the congressional arm of the Democratic Party is, working tooth and nail to protect an anti-choice incumbent.
Didn't Cheryl Bustos, didn't she just now have to pull out of a fundraiser for Lipinski because of this? And she is is she the chair of the DCCC?
Yeah, she is, and it's actually worth noting.
Is she going to get on a blacklist because of this?
I mean,
is she going to blacklist herself?
I mean, if you take a look at last cycle, Ben Ray Lujan was the chair of the DCCC. He's not, I think, like a sort of Ilhan Omar or AOC style progressive, but he is, to the left of center of the Democratic Caucus, and he actually refused to endorse Dan Lipinski. And at the time, reporters were speculating the reason he refused to endorse Dan Lipinski is that Dan Lipinski refuses to pay dues to the DCCC. He says he refuses to pay dues because he wants to only select members who agree with his right-wing values. So not only is the DCCC going to bat for this horrible incumbent, they're going to bat for an incumbent who doesn't even pay dues. So by their own sort of logic, this is not someone that they should be protecting. It's quite frankly just, I think, shows how, how much this institution has been poisoned. And Cheri Bustos, she first came to national prominence by sort of playing up the fact that she's a Democrat in a Obama-Trump district, and her goal is to go to war with the progressive wing of the party. And I think that why she's so invested in this race is because she wants to crush progressives, and she views Dan Lipinski as a vehicle to do that.
What do you think it's about Lipinski, or do you think it's just about the institution? I mean, if it sort of feels like maybe Lipinski, I don't know, has pictures of him and Obama in some compromising situation. I mean, what is that? What is that about?
So I really think that there's two things work here. One is that the way that Bustos won the DCCC chair was promising to really take a hard line on challengers and really making sort of incumbent protection from primaries her top priority, which is, ironic given that the DCCC always pitches itself publicly as this organization focused on frontline Democrats. But they didn't choose Bustos because they wanted to win over frontline Democrats. They picked Bustos to protect centrist incumbents in safe seats. The second thing is that if you look at sort of Bustos' entire career, the big glitzy political profiles of her big sort of theory of the case is that Democrats have gone too far to the left and they need to sort of move back to the center to win elections. And I think that what she sees with Lipinski is this opportunity to go to the caucus and say, look, Dan Lipinski is the worst of the worst when it comes to safe seat Democrats, but I was able to protect him. I was able to beat back this progressive insurgency. If you make me, speaker, I'll make sure you never hear from these progressives again. I really do believe that she wants to crush the progressive movement, and she wants to make Illinois 3rd an example of her
just how far.
To do so.
Yeah,
so,
that's
and that's why I think progressives need to really invest in this district, because if she wins, she's betting that is going to crush the momentum going into places like New York, where there are a ton of incumbents who are facing challenges.
That's
and
fascinating.
She's right.
That's fascinating. I mean, the so many times in so many of these dynamics, the last thing you think about is not because there's an actual investment in this fight, but that it creates a precedent or it creates a model or it's symbolic of something, ends up being the answer why these things are fought, so that they don't even have to fight the later fights down the road. I mean, I've heard that story many, many times in a bunch of different contexts. All right, Sean, let me ask you this, and this is just a last question, and it's a little bit meta because this comes up, and it's going to come up over the course of the primary because certainly there will be there's at least a percentage. You know that's what you work with all the time. That there may be a candidate who wins who some of us don't like in the primary, and this came up in 2016. It comes up now. Why? You are clearly associate yourself with views that are to the left of where certainly the establishment of the Democratic Party is, certainly the major institutions within the party, and probably with most of the party, you're to the left of. Why do you expend your energies on these projects within the Democratic Party as opposed to on the outside of the Democratic Party?
Sure. Yeah, this is something I've been thinking about a lot recently. I think that the goal of the progressive left should be to become a member in good standing of the sort of broad Democratic Party apparatus. And by that, I don't mean like, the DNC, and I don't even mean for the most case, like the DCCC. The Democratic Party is this sort of broad network of activists and organizations that are broadly like sort of invested in the Democratic Party winning elections. And I think that if the progressive left has a meaningful caucus within Congress, has, like real organizational grassroots organizations that are capable of influencing Democratic primaries, and has, a base of people who are really committed to the ideals of the Democratic Party, even if not often the ways that gets diluted down in policymaking, we can start to influence that institution and move it in our direction. And I think that at the end of the day, many people who think of themselves as Democrats hold ideals that are very close to my own. They're supportive of the Green New Deal. They're supportive of Medicare for all. They think that ICE is run amok and needs to be reined in, if not abolished. And I think that by taking that case to those voters, we can win them over to our vision. And I'm fully capable of believing that was not true in the past. But I think that it is true now more and more that particularly the next generation of Democrats holds these ideals, and that we should create avenues for them to gain power and to wield that influence. And I think that, we often can overstate the sort of influence of the left independent of the Democratic Party. But with the control, if we control and have a say in that institution, we can do amazing things. I really look at the conservative movement in the Republican Party as a sort of vision of that.
Sean McElwee, Data for Progress. We'll put a link to the gerrymandering, despite who you ended up.
I'm serious. I'm serious. Let's do one together.
We will talk about this. We will.
All right.
We will talk about it. Absolutely.
I want to get your thoughts on my Meditake at some point, though.
On your what? Well, we can get
your thoughts on my Meditake.
Your thoughts on your Meditag?
Meditake. The things I just said.
Oh, the Meditake. Yes. No, I mean, I largely, I agree. There's, it would be nice to own the levers of the apparatus, frankly, and to at least have a hand on the apparatus. That's, I like the idea of taking control of pre-existing institutions. That is the most successful route, in my estimation, to change. But we will talk more about that in the future. Sean McElwee.
Just one. Okay.
What? What is it?
I was just going to note, like AOC, I think that there are a lot of people who have been won over to her view, and a lot of what you might call normie Democrats who see her and look up to her. And I think that's an incredible amount of influence that the left has.
Huge.
And I think it's something that we should invest in doing more and more.
I agree totally. Sean McElwee, Data for Progress. Thanks so much, buddy. Talk to you later.
Have a good one.